Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 3 of the Dodgeball Podcast, first episode. And I feel like if I had taken any more of a break, I probably would have just abandoned this project entirely. So I guess it's time for me to get back into the swing of things. And couldn't think of a better way to start than with a recap of the second annual Dodgeball Tribune. And here to help me do so is Tyler Greer, Bill Fischer, and Joseph Colella. Guys, thanks for hopping on, especially so quickly. I mean, Tribune was just, what, 2 days ago? So thanks for being here.
No problem.
All right.
Thank you.
So let's go ahead and kind of just dive right into it. Tyler, I just want to hit you with the first question. How did it go for you overall?
I think it went really good. Obviously, I had Joe, who helped run it for me, did a great job, made it really smooth for me. He just took care of everything. I was able to play. I was able to enjoy it with my team. It was just really great, I felt, overall. And we had 13 teams show up. We had 4 courts, same venue. And, we had some some unfortunate perspiration and rain that definitely caused some mishaps. But other than that, it was really great. And, just enjoyed myself.
That's awesome. I was wondering because I saw you playing on Heat, and I was like, I wonder if this is an event that he actually gets to enjoy. And I'm sure having Joe basically running the tournament probably helps substantially. Real quick, how many? You said there were 13 teams. Do you remember how many teams were last year?
There were 16 teams last year, but this year I just decided to make it like men's only, so that's probably why we didn't get as many teams. And I actually tried to cap it at 14. So actually, I originally capped it at 12, and then I allowed one more team to go up, and then I was going to try and find a 14th, but it just worked out that 13 was the number, and I was really happy with all the teams that came out. It was a really competitive tournament, so that's always important.
I'll say. Yeah, I was going to give you a hard time. I was going to say, at long last, the men finally have their own dodgeball tournament. That
it's about time, right?
Yeah. Did you get any flack for that? Or do you get any flack for that? Just from...
I'm sure I probably did under, in whispers. Nothing really to my face, but
yeah.
I just think, overall, it's like, guys, we don't really have like a men's only tournament. So... and the women do, and there's no men allowed to play, and so it just felt right to be like, dude, it's just men's, not a big deal. Not trying to exclude women. It's just there can be a men's tournament. It's okay to have men's only tournament. So,
so many rabbit holes I want to pursue right now, but in the interest of moving on and hearing from the other guys, I'll push pause on that one. But we might come back to it. But Joe, I mean, did you play in the last year's Tribune?
Yes, I did. I played on I believe it was a random team, and we did okay, but it was fun. It was fun. Foam is really not my game, so and no sting, it's bearable for me. So I decided to and this year Arsenal, we have a lot of new players on the team, so I wanted to give them the opportunity to play together and have the opportunity to kind of watch them play from afar and see what what things we need to work on for the upcoming elite season. So,
gotcha. Yeah. So the reason why I ask is I wanted to find out why you decided to sit out this one.
So originally, I actually hurt my groin or hip flexor, whatever you want to call it, at Nationals, the very first game of Open 8.5, and I played through the rest of the tournament with pretty much a pulled groin and really did a lot of damage to it. So I've actually taken the last 3 or 4 months off trying to slowly work back into it.
Gotcha. That's smart. And then obviously, I mean, with the... Is it an app or is it software? What exactly did you bust out with that I think I saw for the second time to maintain scores and scheduling? Like, you want to talk about a little bit?
Sure. I mean, the platform I use is it's Excel, but I wrote the VBA script to run through, basically run the tournament from start to finish based on you know, from the inception of it to all the way to finishing up the brackets. And so it's been about a year and a half I've been working on it, and finally, I think this is the third tournament I've used it, and so we haven't really had any hiccups with it. So I'm pretty confident it's ready to kind of go into be available to the public here soon.
That's awesome. And we're kind of talking about a little bit before we hit record, and I do want to dive into a little bit more. So again, I'll probably revisit that in a second, because I definitely want you to get into like stats and some of the really awesome features about this thing. What do you call it? Does it have a name, or is it just like a scheduler? Or
it doesn't have a name right now. It just says Dodgeball Tournament Template is the title of every beginning.
Oh, okay. Well, very
I
cool.
haven't really thought of anything clever to call it yet, but I am definitely leaning towards something that involves Hotchkiss of some sort.
Not Big Sexy or anything?
I was gonna say, call it Big Sexy. It's got to be.
Big Sexy is this my Sin City alter ego. The Sin City tournament, that's where it originated from. So, but Hotchkiss is my everyday dodgeball name. So,
Hotchkiss. Yeah, I mean, it's got to have your own personal touch to it. It's going to be a legacy, I'm sure, that you leave for everybody. But so let's take a step back, Joe, and I also wanted to ask, like, just how did it go from your perspective? From just kind of being on the outside, running the logistics of the tournament. Like, what were your high level thoughts there?
Sure. So we started. I think we probably started about 3 or 4 minutes behind schedule. So I think our very first match I had timed at 9:34. We were supposed to start at 9:30, but I think through the way we did our schedule, I highlighted everything for all of our teams. Each one of the courts had score sheets that let every team know where they needed to go. So I think the logistics between each of the rounds, or the time frame between each of the rounds, went a lot quicker than maybe some of the other tournaments. So we were able to get through all 13 rounds that we had planned on for both divisions. So nothing got cut short, which I thought was going to be really, really tight. But we ended up at the end of the day not excluding anything from what was on the original schedule. So I thought that was that's always a positive when you can start and finish your tournament on time and not cut anything from the players. And that was probably the thing that I was concentrating on for most of the day was, you know, in between divisions, you know, I set up the foam WDBF courts. And so the transition between divisions was really smooth. You know, there was really no time lag in between each of the divisions or when brackets needed to be set. And for the most part, the players, you know, they knew where they had to be and they know what they had to do. And I thought overall it was a great tournament, except for maybe the walls that were sweating.
Right.
Most of the day.
you can't help that, though. Like,
something that can't really be helped.
Yep.
But we did our best. You know, we made some announcements to help, you know, alleviate some of the water on the court by, you know, where players not getting on the wet ground and whatnot. But there's only so much you can do with that.
Yeah, unfortunately, weather is not something you can control. But yeah, I have to agree. I mean, I didn't go to the first one last year, but this felt like any other great, well-branded, put-together tournament. So how about you, Bill? What were your thoughts?
This is one of the most exhausted I've been after a tournament in a long time. There's a lot of dodgeball. Single elimination is tough. Like, just in terms of if you go far, you've played a lot of dodgeball to get there. Like, especially when you go to game 7, you have to be ready for that next match pretty soon. Like, you know, you're the one holding it up, and so you're going back to back to back. That was intense. But Fortune took fourth in no sting. I was super happy with that, especially nice. After losing Lou. Like, we all stepped up and we did our thing. It was a big day for us. I think we left it all on the court for no sting, and we definitely felt the exhaustion going into foam. And also just seeing just how good everyone is at 7-inch foam, I think it lit a fire under us to really practice for it again. We had some practice for it before the combine last year for Lou. And now there's going to be another big push in Seattle to get that 7-inch ball into more regular rotations.
That's awesome. And I'm sure is that what you wanted to have as an outcome, Tyler, is just to bring more foam-based tournaments to the masses, or? I think
yeah, totally. I mean, that's kind of the catch on this is, everyone loves. I mean, majority of people in the country now have adopted and love no sting, and part of my requirement for registering for this tournament is you have no choice. You have to play both divisions. You have to pay for both divisions, otherwise you're not playing in the tournament. So I think that's a great way moving forward of getting their feet wet, necessarily, because with foam, especially I talked to Colin Dowling and Saeed Abdul in the East who run a lot of tournaments, and they say foam is just not in demand. People don't really like it in the East, at least right now. And I'm like, this is a perfect opportunity if I were to throw a tournament there in the East, do it, whatever, open or men's no sting and then men's foam. And it just starts to get people interested in it, liking it. And that's how you grow balls, ball styles. So
I was like, okay. Yeah, I mean, my opinion of foam is gradually shifting towards a more favorable one, just because I have no choice. That's the future of dodgeball, and I can argue that until I'm blue in the face, but the fact of the matter is that's what Team USA plays. And for me personally, I've never experienced USA regulated dodgeball. Like the courts are massive.
Yeah, they're too big. They're too big. I mean, they're truthfully too big, but I don't know. I don't think you can change it. And truthfully, I like the size of the 30 by 60. I agree with Eric Stone and other players who sit there and say it's definitely more strategic having the longer court.
Yeah,
it adds more strategy. When you have a shorter court for foam, it definitely becomes more of a shootout, so to speak. So I definitely agree with that take on it. But at the same time, why it's so difficult and why it's so annoying, especially for tournament organizers, is we have to find gyms that can hold 30 by 60 courts, which is a volleyball size. And it's just hard to sit there and put 3 courts of a 30 by. You can't do it. You can't do a 30 by 60 court, 3 courts of a 30 by 60 on a basketball court, unless it's like it has way extra room. So it really limits your venue choice, and it's quite tough. So
yeah, it was interesting, and I wanted to ask Bill. What was it like adapting to foam for you guys, for your team? Like I think you mentioned you don't normally play foam too much. So what was that like?
Yes, we had a 7-inch foam tournament like a week before this one. So we at least got our feet wet with playing it. And I think for the most part, we have a lot of players, like we play with 8 1/4 foam. So we know how to curve it and how to get power on that. But I don't think we really had a lot of power shots with the 7-inch foam. And also, like, I don't think we were really able to hit our solo throws. It's like, it's just a matter of practice for those. But our curves were good. I think a lot of us were able to hit those targets pretty well. But it was humbling for sure, just to see like just how much practice a lot of these teams had with foam. I look forward to coming back and not being what was it, the 12th seed in foam.
Oh, so what happened? Oh, whoops.
Being in at least the single digits next time.
Let's see. What'd you guys seed? 12 out of 13. Okay, I'm looking at the the seeding right now, and oh yeah, go Grit. We took 8, so yeah, for us.
At least we did win our first round of singles. And that was a tough match, and that was Recoil.
Yeah, Recoil. I mean, most of those Phoenix guys played nothing but foam, so it was good seeing them give people a run for their money. Because I think there's a lot of new faces that haven't even played Elite yet. Definitely want to delve into the teams though. Before we do that, Tyler, was there any other? Was the foam format where it was like 30? What was it? 20? It was 2 12-minute halves. Is that how it went down?
For elimination, yeah. For elimination, it was 2 12-minute halves, so 24-minute matches total. And then in round robin, it was 10, just a 10-minute match.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And then, of course, at the end of each half, as well as at the end of round robin, there was you finished the game with no blocking. So
it's always fun to watch. Was that the same format you used last year? Same?
No, it was actually not. No, I actually fully adopted WDBF rules and everything this tournament. Last year, I basically used elite rules with the WDBF sized court. So it definitely made way more sense to do WDBF rules this time around, as well as format and minutes timed, all that stuff. Definitely made it way better. So yeah, I mean, I like that a lot better. And then again, for the no sting, we adopted the new elite rules, specifically in the format where we went to single elimination, best out of 7, and that was awesome. I loved best out of 7. So I don't know how other teams liked it, but I just thought it was great. Yeah,
I'm curious to see like what the reaction is, because at first I thought single elimination was like the one sin of dodgeball that you do not commit. But then playing it was actually really cool. Like we like that's a lot of dodgeball and a lot of chances to turn the tide of the game and not just have a 2-and-out streak where you just have a bad run, but then you can make up for that with the fact that you're playing 4 games. What were your thoughts on the single elimination, Joe?
I think it definitely tested some people's endurance because you are required to play a minimum of 4 right in a row, where most of us are used to a best of 3. So it definitely took it definitely tested some people, and I think it maybe even hurt a few teams that are not used to best of 7. Because I definitely saw some teams and some players winded by game 5 and 6. So a little different. There's a little different strategy, or at least thought process going into it, where you don't want to burn all your energy those first 3 games because there are 7 people. So I definitely saw some regression on some of the players that weren't used to playing best of 7.
Yeah, I feel like.
I'd also say seeding mattered so much. I mean, my team Heat, we had the #1 seed, and we basically, didn't have to play Thieves and Crisis, who I think both were, high seeds. Crisis, I think, was the 2 seed. But, because of that, we'd have to play Crisis, we didn't have to play Thieves, and we didn't have to play Rise because they were on this other side of the bracket. And I know that Thieves and Rise went to a game 7, and then we ended up going in the championship match against Thieves. We ended up going to a game 7 too. So who knows? Maybe that had a factor in them not winning. But who knows?
I'm really curious how that's going to look moving into the elite seasons or the elite rounds, because you always got that maybe Doom or Rise or Titan got knocked into the losers bracket, but they're going to clean it up and you'll see them again. Whereas obviously single elimination, they're done. You're not going to face them if a team took them out. So I'm really curious how that's going to play out for these teams here. How about you, Bill? What were your thoughts on single elimination?
I want to pair it with what Tyler said, that it means a lot more in the round robin now, where that seed is so important. I think in the bracket you can even see you don't want close matchups in that bracket. The higher disparity you have going into each consecutive round, the 1 seed gets the 8 and the 4 if everything goes as planned. You're more likely to 4-0 those teams and have less matches, and you have more in the tank going into those later and later rounds. It's such an advantage. Whereas I believe Thieves and Rise went to 7, and us and Fortune and Doom went to 7. And those killed us. That was exhausting. It's really going to put a lot more pressure on round robin. At the same time, I think it lets smarter teams adjust. So it's not just about like who can get off the start and get that lucky triple out on the first thing. You know, it takes away less big explosive moments that you can't really plan for, and how much value those have. You have to be consistent. Like you have to be making those plays. You can't get away with, you know, these amazing moments and rely on them. I mean, you really can't rely on them in general, but they're worth even less now. Like you have to be the better team. So the teams that have the better endurance, the ability to adapt, and you know, the strength and the making their shots, it's just going to pay off that much more now.
Yeah, there was one. Well, in the Fortune Doom game, I remember I was watching just the beginning. We ended up having to play, so I didn't get to watch the whole thing. But like I think it was the very first game. Anthony Collins, who's on Fortune, solid player, he ended up. It was basically a 2-on-5 or a 1-on-5, but he ended up taking all of Doom out, and at the very end catching Justin Pine, like this net catch. It was sick. But right after that game, it was the first game, and Derek Johnson of Boosh, he was playing with us. He turned to me, he's like, and that's why best out of 7 is so much better, because a game like that, you know, like, you know, we didn't know who was going to win, Fortune or Doom, and Fortune was looking really good. But, you know, obviously the reputation says Doom's going to win. And we, you know, he sat there and was like, yeah, like, that's why it's better to have that best out of 7, because a fluke game potentially, you know, doesn't hurt you as much. And obviously Fortune was for legit, you know, and for real. And so they ended up beating Doom anyways. But I think that's the peace of mind I think that a lot of teams will realize this next season is, you know, best of 7. You can have a fluke game in elimination, you know, crazy something happens, stupid ricochets. I mean, we had that against Thieves, where we literally had, I think, one game where they had 3 deflection catches. You know, so we hit our target, but it, you know, unluckily popped up, and one of the members on their team caught it. And, you know, it's just nice that, hey, you know, unlucky plays aren't necessarily rewarded as much anymore. I mean, they still are. You still win the game, but, you know, it's just, I don't know, peace of mind for me. So.
Yeah, there's just time to recover and regroup and fight it through still.
I think it also just gives that much more value. Like when you do come out of there being the lower seed, beating the higher seeded team, people aren't going to say, oh, it was a fluke. Like you beat them 4 times out of 7.
Yeah.
I think it's going to give a lot more respect to the teams that aren't, you know, constantly in those top 3 positions. Or it's going to give them some more respect for what they accomplished.
Yeah. And that, yeah, Fortune, I thought, was one of my big surprises. I loved the way you guys played this entire, you know, especially No Sting. You were a tough out. I think we didn't play each other in round robin, but, you know, we played each other in the semifinals. We beat you 4-2, but I knew after you'd beaten Doom, I was like, dude, they've been looking good all day, and they're legit. And I'm like, and they're doing it without Lukas, you know, so it's like, hey, you know, Lukas is great, but so are the other players on Fortune too. So
it's always really cool if you lose, you know, impact player like Lukas, but your team doesn't really suffer for it. It just shows people are stepping up and you're able to kind of cover for that and still be a threat. Let's kind of dive into the bracket a little bit and just the overall teams for No Sting. And we'll start with you, Joe. Were there any teams that stood out in your mind that you were able to watch, or were you just kind of focused on Arsenal, or what was your take?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
What team stood out to you for No Sting?
For No Sting, okay. Let me take a look. So there were a few teams actually. So Fortune at the number 4 seed for No Sting was a big surprise. One, because of Lukas. I think we talked about that. But you know, they actually a couple of their losses. So they went 5-3 in matches, 12-9 in individual games for No Sting round robin, and I think one of their losses was to Roybots, one of their hometown teams. But they lost to the number 10 and 11 seed. So sweeping some of that up, they're right up there with Crisis and Rise in the number 2 and number 3 seed if they cleaned up some of those matches. So to me, that was a surprise because they did beat a lot of the better teams that I thought were there for no sting. So that was one surprise. Another surprise, I think, on the opposite end was Doom. I thought wasn't sure what to expect since they kind of disbanded, but they went 5-3, and they didn't really look like the powerful Doom team from the past, so I don't really know what happened there. And then Thieves, wasn't really sure what to expect out of them. Well, I knew that they would do good in no sting, but they fared right around the 50-50 at 5-3 and the lower end of the 5-3 scores. They went 12-7 in the games. They ended up in the 6th seed, so right in the middle of the pack. I thought maybe that they would do a little bit better than how they showed in no sting.
Yeah, to their credit though, they didn't have Daniel Ariano. I think that's how you say his name, his last name. Anyways, yeah, he was out. I mean, he played a little bit, but he didn't play at all during elimination. And he was, obviously last year in UDC was the main reason why they won the whole championship for UDC. So Thieves again is Thieves for a lot of people that don't know is to the rebranded basically because they lost a couple of players or decided to go in a different way on personnel. So,
however, they did bounce back in the bracket. Probably the most surprising matchup in the bracket was Crisis versus Thieves, and Thieves won 4-0. They swept them in the best of 7.
Yeah, that was crazy. I want to see that match too because
I know I didn't get a chance to see it. When I wrote down the score, I said, "Are you sure it was 4-0 Thieves?"
Are you sure?
That was honestly was exactly what I told the rep. I asked the rep. I said, "Was it 4-0?" And I wasn't trying to discredit the Thieves, but I think there was much anticipation that Crisis was going to do well for the no sting division. So that was a big surprise, and I think they went 4-0 there, and then they ran up against Heat and took them to Game 7, and that was a pretty intense a match.
Yeah, especially Game 7. That was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was so obviously I ref that one, and that was pretty intense to ref as well, and it looked like it could have gone to either team at any point. I don't know if you guys remember, it was kind of like an anticlimactic ending though when I'm not sure what his name is. Is it Trevian McCain?
Who?
For Thieves, Trevian, I think.
Trevian McCain.
Yeah, where he ended up like doing that handstand because he went over the line. I don't know if you guys remember that.
Yeah, that was like the end of it, right?
Yeah, that was like the final out, and it was like, oh man, what a sad way to go out. I thought he was getting some momentum, and I thought it was going to be a bit more of a battle, but yeah, it looked like either of those teams could have taken it, and I wasn't surprised that Heat took first, but at the same time, kind of echoing what Joe was saying, I was expecting Crisis to take first. Just because of the lineup, all the hype, and yeah, it looks like that didn't happen. What was it like playing against them, Bill, for your third place match?
Crisis is a team that's like a carrot on a stick, except the carrot's gigantic and the stick is also gigantic, but it's invisible. And you don't realize the stick is there until you get hit with it really hard. And so for the teams that like realize just how, like what Crisis is doing, like you fall into their trap so easy. They are aggressive with Billy and Ketchum just doing what they're doing. With Brody, Tad, Ryan, like everyone on that team is like they can be aggressive and they're going to hit their shots. But if you slow the game down, that's where we found success. And so if you keep running for that carrot, you're going to get hit. But if you play your game, I feel like that's where your advantage is. Like, don't let them play their game. When we weren't playing their game, I feel like they were making mistakes. A lot of like long throws that were end up just like being caught, or it end up like they'd get hit and they'd lose so much momentum by the time they hit us. They'd be an easy pop-up catch. But beside that, they look dominant. Like, when they were at that front line, just powering through you, they look unstoppable. Thieves, we only played in round robin, and unfortunately I didn't get to see much of them between the best of 7 with Doom and then having to play Heat afterward. I think we got some best of 3 luck in those situations where you start off with a double out that like hits, I forget who it was, hit someone in the middle and then bounced off and hit Xander. And then Xander seemed to be the one that was like in like the end of the game a lot and kind of pulling some stuff out, at least when I saw them. So we had some luck there. When I asked Fortune, like what stood out to people, I think it was that, Heat was throwing heat, especially that right side. Like, you guys are tough to deal with. Didn't get to play Arsenal. Overall, though, like this tournament had depth. Like, no team was really like a walkover. Every team had the potential to beat you if you weren't playing your game. Like, you had to step up. You had to do your thing. And best of 7 punishes you if you get cocky or whatnot. You have to play that game.
Yeah, it was. That was a good point. Like, when I played with Grid, it was like, man, there is no team that we can just kind of steamroll. Like, every match in round robin and obviously elimination was a battle, and I just felt like that's probably just what you can expect with tournaments like these now. Wanted to, I don't know if this is gonna stir the pot, but I heard this a lot, just kind of like side conversations and whatnot, and I want to see what you guys thought about it. But going back to Crisis, a lot of people were saying that they don't have a captain right now, and that's part of why they weren't performing as great as they should have been, at least in Nosting. Bill, Joe, Tyler, did you guys hear any musings like that, or any kind of sidebar conversations regarding that
they're questioning that they don't have a captain?
Something like that. Like, there is no like leadership role. Like, they're just a bunch of guns just going crazy.
Justin Pines on Crisis on a regular team, but he played with Doom. And I think he's really the guy on that team that holds that team together, along with Brett Baxter. Just Brett Baxter wasn't there this weekend as well. So both of those guys really bring a calmness to the team, and I know Justin is really brings the leadership to is more the captain on that team to settle everyone and really kind of control the court and be more of a floor general.
Yeah, they just seem like, I don't want to say out of control, but they just seem very like undisciplined at times watching them. But obviously they fixed that during foam. I want to ask if there are any other teams or players that really stood out. I want to say, like, I think Rise kind of got a bit of a bad streak with losing Allen early. I don't know if you guys saw like his injury. I guess he like fell or something, or something that rendered him pretty much immobile.
He hurt his back, I think, probably by the second match that they played in Nosting. And so they played down for a little bit, but they ended up picking up Andy Marquin was there, and so he played. Yeah. He played for them and filled in for Allen's position.
Yeah, that's because Havoc decided not to come to this, so Andy didn't have a team.
Gotcha. And was there any?
But yeah, I think I was just gonna say, to add on to that, kind of, I think teams, well, if they haven't realized it already, I think it's kind of important that you start getting a 7th.
Yeah.
You just need a 7th person on a team. There's a lot more injuries that are happening. We're getting older. And the other thing is, along with Nosting and foam, these are kind of more of the younger guys' games. I mean, you can see last year Tuda got second, and now Thieves got second. I mean, they're one of the youngest teams in all of dodgeball. And Heat, the team I'm on, I mean, my age, I bring them down a little bit, but they're a young team too. And I just think, especially with these smaller, new type balls, I mean, these balls have kind of just appeared, at least competitively in tournaments in the last, 2 to 3 years maybe. So you just kind of see that the young guns are kind of making their mark in this game now, as opposed to the older players. And Rise is unfortunately is part of that, even though they still dominate in 8.5. It's definitely a different game when you turn to no sting and foam. So
yeah, it's funny because I was actually going to make a comment about how it's pretty smart to have a 7th person on the roster because of old age. I wasn't going to phrase it just like that, but yeah, just you can see what having an injury does to a team, especially if it's somebody like Alan who's very impactful for Rise and a team
that only has 6 players. I mean, that just kills you.
Yep.
You can't, just kills you. So
I think to counter that, Fortune, like we lost Lou, but I don't know. I think when you have 7, there's just so much like mixing up, and there's some loss of expectation about what's going to go on to your right. Whereas if you always have those same people in, like you kind of know what's going to happen. You get that consistency. I don't know. I personally don't like playing with subs.
I know. Neither do I.
Yeah. Like I get it though. At the same time, like if something does happen, it's terrible. But I think at the same time that kind of reflects like relying on one big gun on a team like isn't going to work. Whereas having that depth is what's really important, especially now that you have best of 7, right? Like you're going to rely on that depth more and more, especially like if you're relying on your one big gun to do all the work in 7 games in one series, you're going to wear them out and they're not going to be there for that next match. Like you have to have that depth.
It's asking a lot.
That's a great point to tag on to that. Yeah. I mean, yeah, no more, it's no more evident than looking at Heat, especially in that championship game. Sean Wheeler put on a show really in that game 7. It kind of sucks that he got caught at the very end, but he had like 4 kills in game 7. But in prior games, I had a couple really solid games. Cody Stidham had a solid game. Randy even had some good plays. So you're right, Bill. I mean, it's totally, you need depth. And every player needs to be able to step up. Every player needs to be able, on your team, needs to be able to be a force to be reckoned with. Otherwise, you're not really going to see yourself in the championship match. So,
speaking of that, and it's not just because you're here, but just because I watched it. But watching Heat, I mean, you guys definitely had depth, and it looked like any one of you guys was the main offensive threat. There are times where I saw you, Tyler, hit somebody. I'm like, oh wow, that wasn't expecting that guy to throw, because I've been watching Sean do it most of the time. So you guys had a lot of variety. And one thing I wanted to ask, though, is obviously you guys didn't have Dylan because of his injury. Was he was he like a coach for you guys then, or what role did he play for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, he was a coach. He was taking stats for us too. But yeah, he was just coaching. It was good. I mean, sometimes he would come in after a game. He'd be like, all right, guys, let's get back to our style of play, because we'd gotten out of the game plan. Other times, even sometimes there was one time where I had made a dumb play. And I had like a 2-on-4 or something, and I ended up like trading. And it's like, that's not the right play, and so he came up to me and was like, dude, Tyler, you can't be trading on a 2-on-4. So, just stuff like that. It's always, you need people like that. Sean Wheeler, I love playing with him because he's just really analytical, and he brings up great evidence to tell you, what you're doing right and what you need to be doing better. So,
nice.
Yeah, I'm just really excited to be playing with Heat, but that's just me.
For sure. Yeah, I wonder if Dylan has a future in coaching, even though he's probably still got like 20 years of dodgeball left.
I don't know about that. Yeah,
he's still unless he keeps breaking himself. But let's move to foam real quick. And I still wanted to kind of stay on Dylan, because somebody made the comment where when Dylan didn't play, you guys took first, but when he started playing, you guys took second. Do you remember who made that comment, or did you see that by any chance?
Yeah, that was Hooch. Hooch made that comment.
Nice. Yeah, do you think that's why you guys didn't take first, or it was just different dynamics?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think there's a number of things. I mean, one, I basically had a hole in my finger about 10 days ago, and it still has a hole in my finger. And so luckily it kind of closed up enough where I could tape it up and play. And so that's why we ended up adding Derek. We ended up adding Derek Johnson 9 days ago, so last second. And then my finger got better. So I'm like, all right, well, if Dylan's going to play foam, because he's like, I'm still playing even with the cast on. And I was like, well, if he's going to play foam, then I'll play no sting. And so it was already predetermined, but I could have played foam. I love playing foam. I feel like I have a pretty solid foam game. And then, if Dylan had been able to catch, who knows what we could have done. I mean, obviously we got second, but I definitely think it might have been a different outcome had we had, me healthy and Dylan healthy. So no excuses. Definitely, Crisis definitely earned it, but that's kind of how it went. So
for sure. Joe, going to you and what you noticed on foam, how about any teams that stood out, or what can you tell us from your perspective?
Well, let's see. Big surprise. Well, I guess it's not really a big surprise, but there is a big difference between no sting and foam. With Doom actually went undefeated. They had one tie in round robin, so they went 7-0-1 compared to in no sting. Kind of finishing in the middle of the pack. So that was, I guess, a surprise, but not really a surprise when you have 3 or 4 players on Doom who made the World's USA team. So I guess that's really no surprise. But in their in the brackets, let's see, where did they finish up in bracket?
Well, they lost to us. They lost to Heat in the semifinals.
In the semifinals, okay.
Yeah.
So they played Gridlock. They played Grit and won 6-2, and then they played Heat, and that's where they lost to Heat 4-3, and then they lost again in, I guess, the third place match against Rise 5-3. So kind of went on a downhill slope. I don't know if they just lost their focus.
I don't think they really cared about the third place match, to be honest.
Yeah.
They're like, whatever.
Yeah, I'm not trying to make excuses for them. I know for a fact. So
right.
That third place match was interesting. The very end of it, I think they were tied with Rise, right? It was Rise Doom.
Yeah.
They were tied going into like the final seconds, and it was just Pine left on the court. And Pine threw like a bob throw, like just laid it up in the air for I forget who it was that caught it, but he intentionally like threw a catch to force another game to potentially tie that match, like the very last second. And so it worked, and Pine was thanking them, like, thank you for making that catch. Thank you for giving us this chance. Because they were up like 5 players to 1. Like,
I just don't know why you don't just step out, though. But that's part of the strategy for sure in foam, where, if you're down by, if you're down in number, if it's tie game and there's only like a minute left, or even less than that, you might be smart to step out of bounds and, get another game going. So that way you can at least tie it and go to a 4-minute overtime or something like that. So that's probably what he was thinking too.
No, it's definitely some of the strategy that we were trying to implement. It's like, if we're down for the last person, instead of drawing the game out, if there's time to start a new one, then just go out trying to get the catch and hurry up and get that next game to start. So definitely added a new element to strategizing for teams. Looking at your team, Bill. So you guys beat Recoil 4-1, and then what was it like facing off against Heat, from what you can recall?
Oh my God, Heat was amazing. Like, they were so difficult to play against. And just to add to it, just going back one, like playing against Recoil, it kind of showed. We went, I think, 2 or like 1-1 or 2-2 or something like that in that first match. But then getting that net behind us in the second half made such a difference. We're like, I don't know, the ball was like right there all of a sudden. I don't know, that net saved the day. Having that net side was awesome. But then playing against Heat, like I think that's where like I saw just how big the disparity was, where like they can make those shots with power behind them. It was impressive. Like I was saying earlier, like I think we have like some curve throws, and some of our players can throw the heat, but we weren't able to hit our solos as well. They were able to make their shots. Isidro is crazy. I don't know how he does what he does. I thought I baited him 3 times and I still couldn't catch it. Like I had my hands on it, but it just moved completely somewhere else. So don't bait Isidro is the lesson I learned that day. It does not work. It's nuts. I think if you watch the replay, we streamed it on Dodgeball Seattle. You can hear me yell, we got 1, let's try to get 2 going into like the final game. Like we went into it just saying like, let's learn something. Like let's try things, let's learn things. Let's see what works. Lou gave us some strategy talk beforehand about like what to do. But it was a learning experience to say the least. It was eye-opening.
That's a good way to put it, because when you're down 4-1, 3-1, and you know that next game is going to be completely inconsequential because there's just physically no way you can come back, to at least like turn that into an opportunity and still give it your all is pretty good outlook. I was wondering how that was going to work with these time matches, and then I think I even remembered basically not cutting your guys' match short with recoil, but not going into that final game because at that point it was just like physically impossible to even finish. And I think recoil they were done at that point. Like they didn't really want a lesson at that point. They just want to move on. But it's at least a good takeaway for any teams that are moving forward and playing in this format is, okay, you may be down, you may be out, but take something home with you and get your money's worth, so to speak.
Yeah, right. Because the money, may not have been on the line this time, but it's going to be the next time, possibly. As long as you keep practicing this ball and getting better, I'll take every chance I get. If I'm down 6-0 to crisis in foam or heat, I'll take that learning opportunity every day and see what works. Nice. I don't get to train with them every week. I don't live in LA, so Seattle's. I'll take every moment I can.
That's awesome. So Joe, let's talk about your platform, the Hotchkiss, because I think you're pulling some stats from that too, right? Like this is more than just a scheduler.
Yeah, I am. I was as I was talking about like Doom schedule and how they went through. I'm looking at a screen here that shows. I can double click on any one of the team names and it will pop up their schedule. It shows what their outcome was of each one of the matches. And then what I like about it is it also shows the opponent's results too, their overall results. So let's take a look at, I'm looking at Heat right now, and their very first foam match was against Rise, and they beat them 1-2. Oh no, they lost.
Yeah.
To Rise 1-2. But also lets me know that Rise went overall 6-2, and they went 16-7 in games. So as you're looking at some of these, at some of the schedules, you can see, well, how well did they fare against some of the better teams, because when there's a 13-team schedule and you don't play everyone in round robin, you could have strength of schedule. So you could see that maybe a team that went 5-2, but maybe they played, 7 of, the lowest seeds in the bracket. So it gives you a good chance to look at what did they really do, what's really behind that 5-2 record. Who did they really play, and did they win big against them, or did they barely squeak by? So that's what I'm looking at here, and it shows the game percentages, their win percentages, not only for the games but for matches. So I'll use an example of Heat. Heat went match-wise 5-2-1 with a 71% win percentage in matches, and then for games they went 18-8 at a 69% win rate. And they played a couple of the top teams. They played Rise as 6-2. And then it looks like the rest of their schedule, they played a bunch of teams that were either 500 or below 500 going into the foam, or for the foam round robin. So they might have had a lighter schedule in foam and a stronger schedule in no sting. So let me take a look at no sting. And I'm not trying to bash on Heat. I'm just using them as an example because, well,
yeah,
Tyler's
we
the director.
had a you're right. We definitely had a stronger strength of schedule in no sting than we did in the foam.
Yeah, and you guys actually did better in no sting. You ended up going 7-1 with an 87% win percentage, at 14-5 in games at 73%. But you also played Crisis at 6-2, Thieves at 5-3, and a couple other teams here. Crisis, Doom, and Thieves all were above 500 going in. So you had a stronger schedule in no sting, but whatnot. So it's just some of the stats that come up, and you can take a look at what's really behind maybe someone's record, or how did they fare in that as well. And then also what I like to do, and this really helps with the seeding, and that's why our bracket was up so quick, was as you're entering in all of these scores from round robin, there's a table in the background that's always calculating the seeding. And if there is, for some instance, there is a tie, you have the ability here to click in these windows. Like I can click on Fortune versus Heat, and it gives me the on-demand, how did they play and what was the final score to determine who got the higher seed. So there's a lot of bells and whistles in here that kind of allow you just to really run the tournament a little bit smoother, but also give you a lot of the stats and on-demand stats that you may want to look at a little bit later on.
One thing to know before we move on from that is the seating. We changed it up. I don't know if Elite will follow suit or anything like that, but we definitely, I want to make sure that obviously match, your match record was the first indicator of, the highest seed. And not something that Elite has done previously. I don't know if that's what they'll do moving forward. They might. Joe might have more information on that, but
so for this tournament we used match record. So it was best match record. The second level we used head-to-head. Third level was game win percentage, and then the fourth level we used. We actually used a point system, but it really didn't take into play for this. But really, it was just a hustle. If I had to ask you to go ref your court or get to your court, I just marked down some tallies to see who had the most tallies, and whoever had the least amount, whoever we were comparing, got the higher seed. But that didn't take into effect in either divisions. It only got down to the third level. But honestly, I think that's probably the best way to do the seeding, but that's just my personal choice. I think, the highest, the best match play record, and then head-to-head, and then game percentage is probably one of the better ways to go for a single elim, especially when seeding is so important. I think that only rewards the teams who do well in round robin.
I agree with that, as long as every team, like in this case, you said we got to complete the schedule. And I think that holds true as long as every team has the same number of matches. I know in Elite no sting division, there was actually quite a disparity. And so we had, I think we had lost one match and won 7 or something like that. And so in Elite no sting, we actually were seated pretty low because of that match disparity. Whereas if we had more matches, it would have been more representative of our seed. So as long as that match number is consistent, I think I'm fine with match record. But if it's not,
and I think that has to do a lot with the way the schedule is built out. We had I actually had a hard stop in there at round 10 and round 13, which is we ended up playing all 13 rounds. But if you do the schedule correctly, you can define and make sure that everyone has the same number of matches. And in this case, everyone had 8 matches in both divisions.
Awesome.
We were able to get through. But it's just a matter of the scheduling and making sure that you only play the games that you can get through. So in this case, it worked out. But I understand what you're saying, because I know in Elite, you look at some of the the way the schedule was done, or the way the games were played and counted up. Some teams had 13 matches, and some teams had 14 matches, and they were all counted, and that doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
it's pretty awesome. Like, just going back to all the stats that are available. So will we be able to see what you see, Joe, for after these tournaments? Like, we can delve into this platform and just kind of nerd out on the numbers, or?
Yeah. So here's the pitch. Like, you know, and I kind of mentioned it to Bill before the tournament started, but really what I want to do is, I think this is pretty much ready to go into production or whatever it is to the public. But it would be great if everyone who was running a tournament wanted to use something like this, where it was more of a standardized, it's a standardized product, right? And so it can easily be uploaded into one website where all of that data can be downloaded into whatever database it needs to be downloaded into, so that every and anyone can look back and say, oh, what about the Tribune Tournament? Let me take a look at that. And all the data is there. And to make it uniform and standard across the board only makes it easier for the tournament people who run tournaments to use this platform and send it away, and then all that data goes into a database, and it's all uniformed, and more so just the data is accurate, you know. And so, and from a, you know, broadcasting standpoint, you can pull up all this data and say, you know, back, you know, for the last 3 years, you know, Crisis has done this, or, you know, these two teams that are playing that have come up have played 13 times in the last 4 years, and here's what the outcomes have been. You know, imagine being able to do that as a broadcaster. And the first obstacle is to make it easy for people who run tournaments to, you know, input that data and send it off and get it to where it needs to go for later use.
Man, if only there's like this website for dodgeball data that existed.
Yeah, this common database. It almost sounds like Dodgeball Database would be a great name for a website for someone to go to.
Oh, hey, look, we got Bill here who actually owns that.
Yeah, just to play into that, I announced 2 things this year. The first one was that Schedule Maker, and I had a lot of questions come out of that. And the second one was Dodgeball Database that came out, and all of this goes along with your point entirely. Like, my goal has been, I want to standardize everything, because if it's easy for someone to pick something up and use it to run an event, it's easy for me to just write one program and take your stuff in and output it to this website. Like, you as an organizer, I want to take as many things off your plate as possible. I don't want you to have to think about how to run a tournament, or you know, what's the format I should use, or hey, I got to get my stats up. How do I tell people where we're streaming? The less and less you have to do as an organizer, the better and better the product is going to be for the player, and the more things you can think about as an organizer. And I think once we start getting these things like picked away from organizers, like task lists, I think we're going to be able to do bigger and bigger things because of it. And so that'll just help the sport entirely. Also, as a commentator, having these stats and being able to tell an audience why this match is important. Like, I want to be able to say, like, hey, when Justin Pyan gets hit out first, Doom's win percentage goes from an 88% to a 70%. Like, that's a big first out. When this team gets off their first 2 hits, or this and that, like, to be able to say these things, like, opens the eyes to the audience. We still have to cater a lot to the people that are coming and going very quickly. And so to be able to pull up these stats very quickly is so important. You know, we're going to have to do these things in real time and get deeper stats and explain the meaning, because we as players know a lot of these things. But at the same time, we don't even have a good vocabulary for, like, positions on the court. What do you call the person to the left or right of your corner? Like, I'm sure everyone's got a different name for that. You can call it a guard. You can call it middle wing. You know, you have middle, you have corner. What's that other person called? Yeah, we have to, like, improve our vocabulary as a sport. There's a lot we got to work on. But I think these kind of tools will, like, start helping us define these things.
Man, if only we had, like, a platform where we could write about this stuff and release it in, like, this series of articles. I'm just realizing I'm sitting in an electronic room with a lot of people are producing amazing things for dodgeball, and Yeah, I think, Joe, I don't, because we were talking about offline, but you said that you wanted to make this available for everybody for free use, right? Like you weren't planning on charging anyone? That's incredible.
Yes, that is. So it's basically something that I saw a need for, and I wanted to give back to the dodgeball community. So I saw that it was a challenge, and it hurt my own team. And so I said, well, what better way to do that than to create something rather than just complain about it. I wanted to do something about it, and I've done that with this, and I think I've done that with reffing. You know, I think you know, in the past, I think my team's been burned a few times with reffing, and so that's one of the reasons why I have such a passion for reffing, and I always ref as many games as possible. So I'm just trying to be part of the solution and not part of the problem.
That's awesome. Bill, you're nodding your head. Are you kind of in the same mindset when it comes to your project and what you're working on and what you want to contribute?
Yeah, I mean, I think what Joe's touching on is something, it's a problem that not a lot of people get eyes on until, like, if you go to a tournament and everything, if you only get to concentrate about the dodgeball, you know, you're really just reflecting on what your team did. A tournament went smoothly, and that organizer put in the work and effort to have it go smoothly. There's events where, like, the rules are confusing, you know, things were going wrong, you know, things didn't finish where they wanted to. Teams are upset about, like, the format. But when everything is standardized and you just get to play dodgeball, like, that's a success on the organizer. Like,
absolutely,
we need to make it easier. Like, sorry, how am I trying to say this? It's a problem that a lot of people see, and so we need that solution to make these things better. And it's something that goes underappreciated. Like, having an event runner like Joe is, you know, that isn't a player is absolutely, like, valuable. Like running the classic where Lou is a player and an organizer, and I'm a player and an organizer, and everyone else is a player and an organizer. It's really tough. So having those, like, positions and all these common tools help out so much.
That's awesome. It's very, very cool what you guys are doing, and you know, 5 years from now, when we're looking at how far dodgeball's come, it's going to be because of efforts like this. And so, as a player and somebody that's been around for forever, you know, thank you both for just adding to the awesomeness as dodgeball. And Tyler, you as well with the Tribune, and the fact that we even get to sit down and chat about a second annual recap is pretty awesome. So I remember I'm looking at some of the old notes and some of your, like, things you'd rather do differently, and it's just cool that we're able to talk about it again. Pretty much covered everything that I wanted to, but I wanted to see it open up for you guys. Any final thoughts or anything you wanted to close on?
I have a hypothesis that I can't wait to see. So I know as a ref, like I love reffing, but I think it takes a toll on me in that in two ways. As a ref, I am forced to play and ref, play and ref, play and rest. And I never get that moment to, like, sit and reflect. And I kind of want to see how that reflects in the stats. I want to see if there is a noticeable difference in the effectiveness of a player ref versus a normal player. So I think that's one of my hypotheses, and I look forward to seeing that.
I kind of feel the same way. Like, I'm really grateful for the rounds that I don't have to ref, because I want to reflect and gather myself, and I have no science or anything to back it up off of. But I think I do better when I have a chance to just completely decompress and, like, listen to some music and zone out for a second. I'm curious to see how if people would react to that, or how are you going to measure that? Because I want to know what the result is. So I'll be bugging you for that later. See how that goes.
Yeah, as a player, I'd pay so much more just to have standard refs.
Yeah, well, you know, I tried to do that. You know, last year I had like 4 refs, and then I had a couple player refs that would, like, fill in and stuff like that. It's hard. I tried to do that again this year. I tried to get paid refs, and it's difficult. It's difficult to get people to come out for the whole day, stuff like that. But I agree. Like, I'm right there with you today. You know, I look back at my experience over the weekend, and one, it was really smart of me to hire Joe, and it just made it so easy on me. As well as, this is one of the first tournaments I played in that I didn't have to ref in the last 2 years. Because I chose not to, and it, you know, I think I played better possibly because of it, or yeah, it just things seemed better. So without having to ref and without having to run the tournament, and so I don't know what that means, but I hope there's a solution down the road with as far as reffing goes. Unfortunately, I don't see that anytime soon. I don't know. It's just tough when we have this long of a day. You know, we're talking 11-hour day.
Right.
Yeah.
To pay them, you know, what, $10 at most, $20 an hour.
Yeah, it's really tough. I know. I volunteer to ref at the Women's Classic every year since they started, and it's a 10 or 11-hour day for 2 days, or I think it's 2 days, and it's just it's difficult to get beat up on by all the teams for 11 hours a day, and all you get is nothing but complaints, and then on top of that, you're not getting paid, or you're getting paid very little. But I think logistically, it's difficult. Because you're looking at if you have a tournament you're running with 6 courts, and legitimately you need 2 refs per court, you're looking to have to hire 12 legitimate refs, and from whatever city you're in, and if you're not, logistically trying to get them there and to pay them enough to want to come is quite difficult. And I think many people have tried that in the past, and it just it doesn't work. Or they haven't been able to get it to work yet.
I think when you have more of us older players retiring, at least for the time being, I can see myself reffing just because I want to be close to the actual dodgeball and not be completely done with it. So I think a solution is on its way. But for now, I mean, it's just a thankless job. At the same time, I wouldn't have it any other way. Like, players need to ref for the time being, because I've seen outsourced ref games, and it's been awful. But before we go on a further tangent, Joe, do you have anything else that you wanted to speak towards regarding the event overall?
No, I think I pretty much said it all. More to come, obviously, on this dodgeball tournament thing that I built out. Hopefully there'll be some. I'll talk about it a little bit more in the future. But for now, I think I got a couple things that I want to sew up on it, and then make it available to everyone to use. So awesome. More to come on that.
Yeah, and anybody that uses it, I will gladly parse that and put it on Dodgeball Database. Like, right now, I'm just looking to take in every single event ever. Like, I'm not gonna tell you your local event shouldn't be on there. I will put it up there. I'm
gonna start feeding you some stuff, Bill. I know I threatened it earlier, but I'm happy that it has some place to go other than my head. So I can't wait. How about you, Bill? Any thoughts overall from the Tribune? Any closing remarks?
Yeah, there was Heat beat us, both the team and that gym. Yeah, that was an intense day, a long day, super valuable. I think the level of competition was, worth the flight and coming down and playing in. I look forward to having more like East teams and teams that come from like the UDC circuit that tend to only play those. Like, hopefully we start getting them into like things like this where we do start supporting no sting, and it's not just the 8.5 elite. So yeah, I look forward to seeing more teams come to this thing. I hope to see it grow. I'd love that. Awesome.
And last but not least, Tyler, how about you? Any closing remarks?
Yeah, I mean, to kind of piggyback off that, I would love to, I'd love to throw some Tribune tournaments in the East and in the South and the North of the nation. And, those might be coming people's way. We'll see. But yeah, I had a great time. And, really, I was really satisfied with the overall product and everything. So happy about it. And there will be more tournaments in the future. I'm not burnt out yet, so that's good.
That's very good. Good to hear that. Awesome. Very cool. Well, we'll go ahead and we'll close it there. And guys, thank you so much again for hopping on. Again, 2 days after the fact. Appreciate you guys being flexible. And yeah, we'll just leave that. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Alrighty, so that was a rather quick recap of the second annual Dodgeball Tribune tournament that took place Saturday, February 2nd. Once again, thank you so much, Joe, Bill, and Tyler for hopping on this lovely Monday evening to help me record so quickly. Definitely wanted to get these recaps out faster and be more relevant time-wise. But I will say, obviously, this was my first foray into the Tribune tournaments, and I was really pleased with the amount of honesty that was taking place. I know there was some ramblings of people cheating towards the end, but from my perspective, the games I played against and refed, everyone seemed honest and were taking outs that were very not sketchy, but just really difficult to tell if they were hit or not. So if you're one of those players that is taking your outs when no whistle is blown, thank you so much. That just really feeds into the overall integrity of the sport and is just making this better and better. Also, huge shout out and thank you to both Bill Fischer for dodgeballdatabase.com and to Joe Colella for his work with the scheduling software, or the Hotchkiss 2000, or whatever we're going to call it. He was showing me a bit of a run through it a couple months ago, and it just looks incredible, and I cannot wait to see what that adds to tournaments in the future. And of course, shout out and thank you to Tyler Greer for just taking it upon himself to keep busting out those articles and put it on tournaments. The dodgeball community has been stepping up significantly. People are producing, and they're becoming part of the solution and not so much the problem, and it's very refreshing to see that taking place. Big congratulations to Heat for winning the No Sting and to Crisis for winning Foam. Again, this past weekend was very exciting. I cannot wait to see how these teams end up in future tournaments, especially in Elite. And yeah, before I continue to ramble on, if you guys are joining me again, thank you, and look forward to Season 3. See how it goes.
Peace out.
Dude, I haven't forgotten that face shot yet.
Oh, yeah, I'm so sorry.
No.
I was going for your back, man, and all of a sudden just saw your face like, oh, no.
Please, I need to get hit in the face more. Please keep doing it.
I mean, I'm glad you're not upset.
No, never. I've thrown enough of them that I expect them to come back my way.